as I have other people who have stood up, but the number of times I've spoken to clerics behind closed doors and so on, and you say, why aren't you saying anything? They say, because if I do speak up, I'll be killed. Well, I address you again, ladies and gentlemen, to the motion.
No, but hold on. I'm sorry. Right, hang on. How on earth does fear of being killed in Pakistan by a minority faction of extremists prove Islam is not a religion of peace?
Let me put it this way. Let me put it this way, then.
No, sorry, I've got to... Because, really, what you've just said is really quite absurd, and I've got to clarify. It takes one person to kill all of us here. One person in a suicide bombing. Now, if we were scared of saying what we're saying now because of that one person, it doesn't mean all of us love war and hate peace in any way whatsoever. It means we all fear that one person who could walk through that door with a suicide bomb jacket strapped to his chest.
If we were discussing Quakerism here tonight, does anyone think that when a Quaker said, I'm quite fearful about speaking up against certain things in my faith, come on, this only happens with Islam. There is no other major faith in the world today where it is the case that people are fearful of addressing religion because they're afraid they'll be killed. It's only Islam, and we're saying there's a reason.
I'm afraid of being killed by apostates, and many of you who came here tonight came under unusual circumstances. I'm not in government. I'm not a powerful person. I am a citizen. I mean, just a normal, ordinary person.
Can you explain what you mean by unusual circumstances?
Unusual circumstances, you went through metal detectors to come to a debate in New York. I mean, talk about Quakerism.
That's because it takes one person to get through those metal detectors and blow us up. It doesn't mean the majority of people are terrorists.
Let me finish. The people that I am protected against, and you as an audience too, the individual who wants to kill me because I'm an apostate of Islam is inspired to do that from the scripture of Islam, the example of the Prophet Muhammad, the clergy that preached to him, and the reward he will get in the hereafter that is promised in the Quran. All of that is Islamic. The sooner you admit that,
I'll tell you what he's inspired
the sooner you admit that, the sooner I can get rid of my bodyguards.
He's inspired. I'll tell you what he's inspired by. Yeah? Right.
Martin, I want to have the last word on this point because I want to go back to the young lady's question.
Sure. So I tell you, he's inspired by the very same interpretation of Islam that you have. He's not inspired by Islam. He's inspired by your interpretation of it, that is Bin Laden's interpretation of it, that is Sayyid Qutb's interpretation of it. And I've got to say one last thing. I've got to say one last thing. The thing is, you're not the only one on this panel. I have an Al-Qaeda death threat on my head too because I'm saying what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is that, and I've been attacked in Pakistan physically for saying this, what I'm saying is enough to extremism, enough to terrorism, let's separate Islam from extremism and disempower the minority of extremists who are trying to hijack a good faith.
Douglas, you've had death threats as well.
Minority.
You have also had death threats.
Sure. I mean, one of the points about this area is everyone gets death threats. I mean, it's just an unfortunate thing about this debate.
I think Zeba and I are going to leave this
I mean, as I say again, I think it speaks for itself. I hope no one threatens a chair.
Can you repeat the question that I liked so much?
Yes.
If Islam is not a religion of peace, is it possible for it to become one?
My answer is yes, on condition that, first of all, Islam is not a religion of peace, and I hope that we have demonstrated here tonight that it's not. Can it become a religion of peace? Yes, if a number of conditions are met.
But what is it for all of the people who practice it peacefully?
But let me complete the conditions.
What is that faith that they're practicing then?
And not only practice it peacefully, but
That's the part that I'm not finding in your explanation.
Why are we having, again, over and over again, first of all, in my view, no monotheistic religion, because there's that divider between we and they, and because when that's unifying, I mean, there are so many factors within every monotheistic religion that make it inherently aggressive. It's not only Islam. But there are a number of factors that in the 21st century combine. Again, there is the history of militarism and the awareness of that. There's the victim status. There's the youth bulge. Let's not forget that. There's the revival of that theology, the revival of the example of the Prophet Muhammad, the investment in the hereafter. And you say a lot of people practice the religion in peace. What we know is that a lot of people are passive and are actually not practicing their faith, are not practicing Islamic scripture.
Who are you to say who's practicing their faith and who's not?
Let me finish.
It's not for you to decide. I'm the Muslim. You're not.
But let me finish. You are not practicing You are
really?
not practicing.
Are you Sheikh?
No, but let me say, you are not practicing.
Let's hear what she says.
Wait a minute. I want
Please,
to finish.
let's hear what her point
You
is.
are not practicing chapter 2 of the Quran, verse 191 and 193. And slay them wherever you find them, and drive them out of places whence they drove you out, for persecution of Muslims is worse than the slaughter of the non-believers.
Chapter 2, let there be no compulsion in religion.
Yeah.
Chapter 2, to each community which has given direction as it follows, all of you compete in the performance of good deeds. So which point? We have so many verses. So that's not a reliable argument.
Let's have one person speak at a time.
If you read the peaceful...
Ayan, start again, because I was talking.
That proves my point. If you read from the Quran and you say it's a religion of no compulsion, and you believe that that verse is practiced by a person like you, you will concede that there are other Muslims who will read the verse that I just quoted and be inspired to engage in acts of violence. And by the way, the verse that you just read, it has a latter part that says, except the unbelievers.
Sure, I'm sure. Every part does. And I can look at the Old Testament.
But I wanted to complete the answer to the question.
Let's Eva answer this.
Sorry, what was the last point?
Well, my last point was that it is both. It's not just a religion of peace, it's also a religion of war, and both verses prove that.
Okay, but do you want to respond to that, Seba, or do you want to...
I think I'll have to come back.
Okay, Douglas.
That is an important one. Ayan and I and people who make some of the points we make are often accused of taking bits of the Quran out of context. I think you've just seen a very good example of it from the other side. I'm not saying that that isn't a good verse to live one's life by. One cannot just simply quote the verse about there being no compulsion in religion as though it doesn't have
the other ones either
a
without
follow-on.
context.
It has
as though it doesn't have a follow-on.
Ones.
And as Ayan has just showed you, it has a follow-on. So I think this gets back to the very important question the lady halfway back there made, which is whether or not this can be a religion of peace. I believe it can be. And when I said earlier there are 3 types of Islam I identified, I said the first one, the scriptures, the life of Muhammad and so on, bad. Second one, Sharia, interpretations, bad. But thirdly, the way Muslims live their lives today, in this country and countries like it, that is our source for hope. And the source of hope for that is that they individually use, like many people do religion. I'm not a religious person, Ayan isn't either. But we recognize the fact that people of religious faith have the right to that faith, should practice that faith, should have no fear of practicing that faith. There's no problem with this. But it's a private matter, and one which people come to very strange private arrangements about. And I just wanted to add this, which is that if those people are going to be able to reform that faith into the religion of peace you're talking about, then yes, we would be the first people to encourage them. But if we're going to have that debate, as I hope we've shown tonight, it has to start with honesty.
Let's do one more round of questions.
It has to start with frankness.
Donna, do we have time for one more round? Yeah. So I'm going to do it again. I would love to hear from an audience member who is a member of the Muslim community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you feel like speaking. And not that I'm profiling, but I saw a lot of blonde people raising their hands. And again, I realize it's a complex world.
Jihad Jane was blonde.
That kind of profiling is allowed.
All right, I'm going to take something from the left. Yes, blonde person, you can go. Anybody from the... Yeah, okay, go ahead. And then on the right side, yes, okay. Ma'am, I see you. Yep. So, again, remember that way that great question was phrased? That's how you do it.
So, for those in favor of the motion, my question is, what she just read from the Quran, you expressed that you didn't agree with it, and clearly, you're interpreting the religion as you will and in a very peaceful way, which is great, but do you ignore those parts? How do you react to it? You said there were multiple ways, just like we interpret the Constitution, there are multiple ways to interpret what the Quran is saying. I just want to know exactly how you interpret that chapter she just read to us.
Thank you. To that end, I happen to be Roman Catholic, but my wife is Israeli and my son just went through his bar mitzvah. There was some pretty spicy stuff in Leviticus.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But then Catholicism went through the Reformation and Enlightenment.
Yes.
Hello, I'm from Pakistan. I'm a Muslim from Pakistan, and I just want to comment on the suicide bombings. There's one almost every week. And if you feel that as a nation, after being destroyed repeatedly since 9/11, we would still be sympathetic to extremist sentiments when our, 2 of my students were killed in suicide bombings.
But what is your question?
My question is, I want you to consider what the value of socio-economic, cultural factors, political dictatorships. What role do those factors play in making young people susceptible to extremism?
Do you not feel that Majid covered that in his remarks? Because I feel that he did.
Well, I don't think the audience understands.
Let me put it on hold then, and then the third person.
I have a question for Ayan Hirsi. I'm a Muslim woman, and she was referring to the subjugation of women. This has to do with the subjugation of women. I'm from India, and my question is, if women are not educated, in a lot of Muslim countries, that's the problem, that women are not educated. And when they're not educated, they don't know what their rights are. And so they're not going to demand their rights. That's the whole point in not educating half the population. But my question to you is, what does that have to do with Islam? Because according to my understanding of the Quran, the first word that was revealed of the Quran to Prophet Muhammad was read. It had to do with education. And the Quran...
So can you give me a question in one sentence? Yeah, I know you can, so go for it.
My question is, what does that have to do with Islam? Because the Quran doesn't say that, according to my understanding. The education, it doesn't say educate men, do not educate women. Nowhere in the Quran have I found that.
Let's take that last question first, Ayan.
I want to agree. Thank you so much for that question. I completely agree with you that women in the Muslim world today, not all of them, but most of them, are denied education. The reasons that are given by those who do the denying are Islamic. They refer to the concept of guardianship. So the guardian has the authority to decide whether he sends a girl to school or not, and for how long she goes to school. The main reason in Muslim countries where girls are sent to school, Muslim communities where girls are sent to school, the main reason for pulling them out at the age of menstruation is the fear, the terror that they might lose their virginity. That modesty, sexual modesty that is demanded of girls, which at first it preceded Islam, it was a tribal Arab culture elevated to religion in Islam, where people find within the Quran that in the Hadith, that insistency on her virginity, on her being a virgin on the night of her wedding, that is one of the main reasons that is given. And if sexual emancipation were to occur within the Muslim world, and I want to challenge a guy like Majid Nawaz to take the forefront as a man by saying that you value a partner, a human being, more than her hymen, that would revolutionize Islam completely. It would take, girls would go to school, they would be independent, they would be able to articulate what their rights are, and more importantly, they could make Islam a religion of peace because they would bring their boys up to be employable, to be educated, and to renounce suicide, killings, and martyrdom. Uneducated mothers are mothers whose children, whose boys, bad guys can take advantage of.
We're at the point where normally we move on to our third round. We have these two questions standing out there, and I'm going to extend, with everybody's acceptance, a few minutes of this section tonight. Nobody seems to be leaving, and no one's asleep. Majid, if you can be very brief to that, and then I want to get to the last question.
To be honest, I value a can of Diet Coke more than a hymen. I mean, really, everything's more valuable to me than a hymen, and especially a woman. So I really don't understand the point of your question there. But allow me to say, however, that every Muslim questioner from the audience today is not a true Muslim, and every one of you may be a Christian is not really a Christian, and any of you may be a Jew is not really a Jew, because I have the absolute monopoly of defining all three of those religions for all of you. And really the passages that, because I'm saying this because of the first question, and that is the passages that were referred to about fight them wherever you see them. Now the thing is, really, the founding fathers of this great country who wrote the Constitution believed in slavery and were practicing slavery. Now, does that mean